Hi everyone, this is Daniel Gregg, and I'm going to make you a video today about the good news of Messiah. And we're not going to watch me mostly, we're going to watch the good news of Messiah. So I'm going to turn it around here, and we're going to focus here. Now, sorry about last time, I had it on autofocus, and it should be switched over to manual focus. Alright. So this is the front cover of the Good News of Messiah here, and you'll see what's supposed to be an almond tree on the front here, and that's the spine and the back flap. So the first page, before you get to any text, is sideways, so we'll turn it. Now let me tell you where to find it so you can download it here. Alright. Paste. Okay, let's begin again with fresh batteries here and the microphone. And we got it on autofocus this time. Sorry about leaving it on, we got it on manual focus. Sorry about leaving it on autofocus last time. Okay, so this is a video I'm making for you. My name is Dan Gregg. Alright, there's the front cover of the Good News of Messiah. And you can download a link to it right here. Okay, and then if you want to get a shot of the author here. Okay, that's me. I'm gonna, I should temporarily set it back to autofocus. Alright, there we go. That's my face, but I'm not going to show myself too much here because we're going to talk about the Good News of Messiah, and I don't want to switch my camera up here. So we'll point it back over there, and we'll get it centered again. Alright, so this is a front cover here. This is supposed to be an almond tree, and it has 7 branches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That was intentional. These are supposed to be flames of fire, like it's lit here. Okay, and this also represents a tree of life. Okay, and this says Sorat HaMashiach, which means the good news or the glad message of the Anointed One. And there, of course, is its English title. Alright, so let's go down here to the chart, the first chart here. And if you're in your browser, you can, hopefully it has it. Your browser has different controls, but if I rotate this clockwise, then we can turn the page so that we can see it. Now, of course, if you have, oops, what happened there? Okay, so let's go back to page 2. There we go. Alright, we click there, and then we can zoom up on it there, right there. Okay, so this is the ministry of Messiah Yeshua. Now, I checked the publisher or the printer, and they're still printing my proof copy. They haven't shipped it yet. The order is in, but they haven't sent any tracking information yet for it. So I don't have an update for you on that. So we're going to go ahead and discuss different features. Since you have the ebook here, you can get the free ebook online and you can download it. Alright, so this is the first chart in the book right here. It's called The Ministry of Yeshua. And the point of this is to show the chronology, and it's syncing up with appointed times, feast days and special Sabbaths in the Torah. Okay, so we have, let's see, Yeshua's baptism on the last day of Av, and then 40 days of temptation from Elul 1, which is the 6th month of the Hebrew calendar. Okay, now I'm using the Babylonian names for this, but they're not all bad, these names. Some of them have innocent meanings. And Elul is actually used in the book of Nehemiah, and other of these month names are actually used in the scriptures also. So the temptation for 40 days goes from the first of Elul through Tishri 1, past Tishri 1, and actually ends up on the day of the atonement at the end. Okay, but this has to do with synchronizing with Moses' final phase of fasting for 40 days. So he fasted for 40 days more than once. Okay, so then we have Passovers, 3 Passovers of John. Passover of John 2:13, the Passover of John 6:4, Passover of John 11:55. Okay, some people don't believe this Passover existed. That is actually an error, and John 6:4 is actually a legitimate Greek text. The variations are in some very, very late manuscripts, not in the first manuscript, so the omission of the verse or the key words in the verses came later. So what Michael Rood is telling you about that is completely false, and it also allows him to collapse the chronology to a year or two, which creates all kinds of other contradictions with biblical chronology. So he doesn't know what he's talking about when he's talking about the chronology. Chronology of Yeshua's ministry was 4 years. He officially began his ministry at the Passover of AD 30 in John 2:13. Okay, and this was personal preparation for his ministry in AD 29. And the 4 years are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, actually, from the Passover of AD 30 to the Passover of AD 34, that's actually 4 years of actual time, even though it's parts of 5 years here. Okay, so the church is settled on either AD 30 or AD 33 for the crucifixion, because they can get the Friday dates, which is a misunderstanding of the chronology of Yeshua's passion. Actually, he died on the 4th day of the week and rose on the Sabbath day. So that works out for AD 34. And later, in another part of the book, I have the Daniel 9 sabbatical years, and that also works out with AD 34. So we see here, let's see, Luke 6:1 mentions the Passover, and that this is the legendary second first Sabbath. The second first Sabbath is the weekly Sabbath after Passover. It's one of the ways of referring to it, and you can see that in the King James Version, but the modern translations have deleted it, even though scholars agree that the original reading was probably second first Sabbath, because it got changed because of the difficulty of understanding it. Why would anybody put something that no one understood in? Of course, the church doesn't understand it. There's notes and stuff on that. We actually have a referent Purim for John 5:1. That's the feast that fell on the Sabbath, and that works out astronomically if you calculate it. We have tabernacles in John 7:1, and then the temple tax was collected around the middle of Adar, so that's what this Matthew passage is all about here. And then Yeshua sent 70 forth on on a journey to preach the good news and heal the sick. Then we have the final Passover, and then we have Shavuot in Acts 2, which came 50 days after his 50 days after his resurrection, or 50 days from the time of his passion. All right. So we have the woman at the well here at AD 31. Oh, we have Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication, mentioned in AD 32 here in John 10:22. Okay, it's called the Winter Feast there, or it's translated the Winter Feast. But it's also, the Greek word for Hanukkah is actually in the passage. So if you look at the bottom scale here, if you study Matthew and Mark, the chronology of Matthew and Mark is more or less in chronological order, but Matthew and Mark prioritize thematic matters. So because it's thematic in different spots, then things can occur out of chronological order. The books of Chronicles and Kings, the book of Chronicles is thematic, not necessarily in perfect chronological order, whereas the books of Kings, 1st and 2nd Kings, are strictly in chronological order, and we'll cover that later, but the book of Chronicles isn't. So in the writings of the emissaries, okay, the book of John is strictly in chronological order, and the book of Luke is strictly in chronological order. So that's why I have the chronological scale of showing when each chapter of each book occurs in which year. So you see John 1 here for AD 29, John 2 and 3 for AD 30, chapter 4 for AD 31, chapters 5 and 6 in AD 32, 7 to 11, and then finally in AD 34, 12 to 21. And similarly, there's a scale for the chapters of Luke here. Okay. Alrighty, so let's move on to the next chart here. I'm going to do this. I've realized some methodological mistakes, if I can pronounce that word, that I've made in past presentations, and that is, I really need to make this for the faithful in Yeshua who've embraced Torah and realized it. I need to make it less apologetic and go down every rabbit trail of apology to those on the outside or who haven't, quote, come to the light on this. And I imagine by using that methodology focused on the Torah observant Messianic community that I will actually end up making the best apologetic. So now if I can just, without actually explicitly making one in every case, so I have to keep that perspective in mind. You can pray for me about that, because I have a past of apologetical combat and continuously winning, and of course that gives you a thrill when you do, but it's also a habit, and it's not I don't know how to say that word, pedagogy. It's not, let's see, what's substituted on the word for that? It's not an educational method that is the most sound. Okay, so now I have gone on to the birth chart here, which is the next chart in the Good News of Messiah. And you'll see the births of Yohanan the Immerser and Messiah Yeshua. Okay, and so what we have here is on the bottom scale, we have the years BC, 3 BC when Yohanan was born, and 2 BC when Yeshua was born, and a little piece of 1 BC. And then I have all the months of the year actually calculated out, showing you how many days in each month. This is done by astronomical calculation. So these asterisk months here are the cases where the month could have been either 29 or 30 days, okay? And actually they cancel each other out, because if this month is 30 days, then the next month has to be 29, so there's a dependency. And if this month is 29, then the next month has to be 30. So the total number of days actually doesn't change over a period of 2 months. Okay, so we have, according to the Babylonian exilic names here, actually in a Hebrew format. So they're not precisely, okay, so for instance, if you come down here, let's see, month 1, Aviv, okay, so the Babylonian name is Nisanu, okay, and in the modern Jewish calendar it's Nisan, but and actually Nisan does occur in Scripture, so it's not bad, but the pre-exilic name of this month was Aviv, okay. One month you have probably never seen before, and I call it Shoshanim, which is lilies, and because this is the one name, month number 4, that in the rabbinic calendar is called Tammuz, okay, and of course we notice Tammuz is a reference to a deified or an idolatrized personage, and so in order to avoid using it, I have renamed this month Shoshanim, which means lilies, okay, and so we can have something to call it if we don't want to just call it month number 4. And so I made that change, knowing that that name had a pagan origin. The Scripture doesn't actually use the word Tammuz for a month's name. If you study out the meanings of these names in the Aramaic, or the Old Imperial Aramaic of the Babylonians, and in Hebrew, you will find that most of them are innocent references and not pagan references. And so those are okay, but it does appear that the Scripture is avoiding the usage of certain ones which do have pagan references. So this is why month number 4 is called Shoshanim here. Okay, so up here we have a little chart here of continuous priestly rotations to Av 9 AD 70, okay, which is the first division. So one of the reasons we know that when the priestly divisions were is because from Jewish sources we know that the second temple was destroyed when the first division had just entered its service, okay, and from Josephus we actually, and Roman sources, we actually know the date of destruction of the temple, so we can back calculate the priestly divisions, okay, and we can find out, according to Luke, the announcement to John the Baptist's birth was in the course of Abijah, or Avia, okay, and that is in the week starting from Sabbath to Sabbath, okay, July 6 to July 13, 3 BC, okay, so that's when the 8th division was, okay, so that gives us a starting point that we can go in here, and we can go 266 days to Yohanan's due date, which would be just after the first month, okay, like on the first day of the second month, or the last day of the first month, Aviv 29, okay, April 5th. All these dates are Julian calendar dates. So in historical work, the Julian calendar is used for everything before the Gregorian calendar change was made in October of, I believe, of 1582. Okay, and then after that we use the Gregorian calendar. So the key to understanding or being able to utilize the information is knowing which system is being used. Okay, most of the mistakes are obviously made by people who think one system's being used when it's actually another system. So the Julian calendar interpolates a leap year exactly every 4 years. The Gregorian calendar has some century modifications that sync it up with the solar year a little bit more tightly. Okay, but these biblical calendar dates are actually according to the motion of the moon. Okay, astronomically calculated, and they've been translated into the Jewish Julian calendar by mathematical calculations. So we see that if we allow a perfect gestation period for Yohanan, we come to his due date. This was his due date. Now, we don't know that he was born exactly on that date because we don't have the same information that we have with Yeshua's birth. However, if we go from Hanukkah, day 6 or 7, now there's a star here, because if you look down here, the month length was variable, so we don't know what the actual case was. Alright, and 266 days, or we come to Yom Teruah, or the Feast of Trumpets, or Rosh Hashanah, which syncs up with Revelation 12:1 and 2. Okay, so that's another feast day we observe here, okay? And then later on we have the Magi visit here. So I'm going to, I guess, wrap this video up now since camera time's running out. And I've reached about 20 minutes here, so I think I can stick it back on autofocus here. Or, yeah. Well, it was on autofocus. I hope it comes out. There I am again. Okay. Daniel Gregg, over and out. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for listening.